So we're slow potatoes. I'm gonna be doing potatoes all week long and trying to see. So the about 4 or 5 potatoes will give you 250 to 300 grams of these stick without oil. Needless to say, right? We got our non-stick. Yeah, those will be cooking for a while. Let's make sure they're not like a permanent fixture on this thing, though. Gonna be walking. Oh boy. Yeah, this might have done a few things here that don't. I tried to put it at a very low level, but this pan tends to cook really hot for some reason. All right. We're going to be cooking potatoes and walking. So I got a couple potatoes on here. Couple large potatoes that I cut into segments. Nothing too exciting there, but I want to talk about some I don't have any videos out there that are boring, like when people just have zero patience, and yet they've seen my videos and they come back to listen to the truth that I'm spitting. I'm going to talk about things like everyone says it, but I'm going to talk about things that nobody discusses. I've been studying the occult, esoteric aspects of this liminal aspect of reality, the world between worlds, for quite some time. But even more so, I've been aware of it. I've been aware of, let's say I've been aware of the fact that I posted a statement up that said, so I'm going to be walking and I'm going to be cooking potatoes here, stovetop, and I'm also going to be sipping on my coffee. So I posted something up that said, either everything is spiritual, meaning we insert the term spiritual for lack of a better term, right? It would be more formally non-dismissive to call it energy. And then to further quantify what energy even means, if we're trying to deduce energy from power, and that there is only one central source of power. And so you get into the reason why I came down to the fundamental conclusion after quite a bit of not only just investigation, but following the sleuthy liminal trail. And this is why people don't have the type of patience to really learn anything. You can talk about the highlights. You can discuss, and I'm going to leave this. This is a segue into what I like. Here I am watching this Eek Acres, and I see right through the guy. He's got this cancer. He had a kidney removed. You go back and watch some of his videos from a couple years ago, and he was really at the end of his rope, and he didn't even know he was ill at that time. But he really was trying to catch a break on YouTube and was just making scraps off of it, and then more aspects of who he was, his struggle come out. But my main reason for bringing that up is he recommended a video. I don't even subscribe to the guy anymore. There are channels where I won't subscribe to them because I'm not gonna patronize them, but at the same time, I see what they're saying as fundamental aspects of information that are coming through the field. And if you watch my other videos or you follow along with the contemporary aspects of who I would most closely associate, like, this is a gray area. This is a tricky area, is to say, well, who do you associate with? And it's like, nobody. Like, you take remnants from certain people and then you see this staunchy fundamentalist view where the only reason that you feel like Kevin with Eek Acres or Cliff High, and the Ether Pirates of the Materium or whatever he wants to call it, right? They're people that comfortably sit back, right? Even though they're experiencing the phenomenon on a very different scale. Like what Kevin is, I don't think Kevin from Eek Acres would be able to handle knowing what he already knows. And you know it too. And you're aware of it. And everything that you do when you watch all these YouTube videos and you're trying to gain some sort of congruence or an amalgamation of information, and to say, you have your holy crap moment, right? Like they say, come to Jesus moment, right? But come to Jesus moment never really happens, okay? What does happen is the phenomenology of self and the realization that you are being put on a cross and attacked as an individual. And when you cease to be an individual any longer, right? And you join in to a group, a collective, or it's been called more recently and throughout history, a community. So many people don't understand, like, from our point of view as children, when democracy was discussed, when the word democracy was used, we were taught that that is a good thing. Now, there are many kids alive today who have never had the wool pulled over their eyes and believed that for one reason or the other. It's always something a little different, okay? It doesn't mean that they were raised in some sort of communist home and an absence of the love of community, or really, you can't segment or dissect or create a disparate notion when you're talking about capitalism. So right now in the news media, they're trying to make, this is something Cliff High does all the time, and it just turns me off. It's like, do I even want to watch another one of this guy's videos with such a small-minded, narrow view? And that is, it is in the media right now to think that Trump, and they're pumping this algorithm out, is a white knight fighting against tyranny and evil and fighting against demonic powers even more so, and that he knows and he's privy to something that's very deep, very penetrating, and that he is a hero. He is a piece of shit. He's a fat bozo. There's nothing good about him. And if you take one ideology over the other, you are staying in this Ouroboros, this just rhetoric wheel of suffering. And I do not align myself with anyone. And this is why. But I can take some really good information from folks that are delving in and trying to at least find. So people disclose themselves. They disclose their agenda. Like yesterday, I'm listening to a recent podcast from Substack of Cliff High, and he's admitting right there that he's been selfish with his powers, right? With the understanding and the utilization for a better world, and the world that he put out there after understanding the memetics and the codified systems that are taking place. He put out an order for himself, which, if you understand this, you'll understand that a lot of anger and a lot of want and a lot of emotion and a lot of mental mind gymnastics, because when you get into craft, you don't have to study craft to know craft. And I'm talking about Minecraft. I'm talking about what would be esteemed as magic. These are all words, okay? This is all someone else's magic. This is all someone else's craft. But there's a uniformal, fundamental, cosmic information system that connects you. In other words, your physiological self is very, the differences are very minute, if there really are any, of this person with a body right next to you, even male and female, even race. That to think that a so-called alien race, we're going off the 1980s esque idea of a Reagan, right? We're going really, standing really far back, right? Man, I have this down on like near to the lowest level, and it's crackling. What the hell is wrong with that? Turn it down a little more. We want to slow cook those. But to stand back and to take an outside view, but this is a point, is that you cannot take an outside view. You're never outside the solarium looking into the solarium, okay? Your idea of being outside, the whole idea behind this CP and this child abuse and this big ring of really, if you want to look at it, it is, whether you believe in God or not, it is taking a big middle finger and saying, F you, God, we don't believe in your way. We don't, you are not our God. So it's in a very grandized sense, right? In a very blatant sense, the dark magic and the black craft, or the satanic magic, or the process church, mental mind warfare. When I realized this and I went into full employment with it, and I started to affect changes in the field, I was called out, and I called myself out, and something within me called out, and it said, dude, you're doing this. Why would you do that? You know, why would you do a certain thing? I would have to give some sort of example here, right? The most obvious would be wanting to have money. And you get into the fact that by me wanting money, I'm perpetuating the machine. So somebody like Cliff High, who fully admits that he's done this, tries to use further magic, further craft to get himself out of it and to justify it. So you have to go beyond justification when you're trying to implement a higher mind order. And it's not that you haven't made a change. It's not that the meditations don't work, right? You'll think that they've done nothing, and then you'll start to see things where it's like, that's weird. I thought about that weeks ago, months ago, or years ago, and now it's finally coming around. Well, you see how energies have a different time signature. And even more so, how those energies are floating through this gas solution that's being kept at a specific wave function quite intentionally, and shifted through these wave functions. And this is why you fundamentally know that Trump is not a good person. He fashions himself as if he's like Solomon, okay? And he takes on So this is the whole thing, is that when you behave, birds of a feather flock together, when you behave a certain way, you take on that energy, you're taking in that entity. And what drove Solomon, and if Solomon ever existed, who knows, but what drove somebody like Solomon or Gilgamesh or any of these other descriptions was their intention, their behavior. And this is why the philosophy and the mindset of these people, to some extent, is quite boring and banal to people. Because they're like, why is it describing what the guy wants, what he's doing, right? These nuances, this is boring. And you get into it and you have to put yourself in those shoes and go, what if you wanted those things? And it's quite different, isn't it? And this is my whole point. And this is why it seems so abstract, because I started out about Kevin, Eek Acres, then I kind of drifted over toward Cliff High. And I'm talking about this fundamentalist. And when I say fundamentalist, you could even put Cliff High in this area. He's not a fundamentalist Christian, but he's on a high horse where he has to see himself, his fundamentals of who he is, the elements that comprise him. He doesn't want to let that go, right? Even though the world rapidly aged him. Even though the world, the ontology, is trying to teach him a lesson and going, you're fucking bald, you're fucking old. Even when you're in your early 60s, you look like you're 80 years old, right? He does look great right now for his health. And that's what he should have put first all along. And this is kind of, I guess, a sort of loose connotation, and myself included, all of us. But this is a connotation, a connection, a kinetic connection back to Kevin. Is that, how did you get yourself in such a situation where you had kidney problems? And you can go through a myriad of different things. You could say he drank, but he never did drink. He says that, right? Maybe he held his urine. Maybe he lived in an area where the pipes were heavily, leaded and corroded. I mean, we all went through that, drinking water out of water hoses through lead systems and shit like that. It was not a fucking joke back in the 1970s. But that is to say that he didn't put his health and balance first as he does now. And that the more pure, better statement is, this woman who I assist at this Eek Acres, who bought the place, Eek Acres, and really controls the moniker, right? And doesn't have any sort of maliciousness. I don't know her history, but she seems like a good lady, and pretty much saved his ass, right? Is in fact the reason why, Kevin, you feel so awesome about life. And a few weeks ago, you did an expose on the fact that she's no, like you even said it, like she's not the most brandishing beauty. And it's like, dude, get up. Like, what kind of high horse are you on? Like, I'm paraphrasing here, but you were discussing, Kevin, that you don't go for these shiny objects. You don't go for the race car. And where, in fact, every woman wants to feel like they are that really high-class race car. They don't want to be the VW bug chugging along that looks like they took a dump in their pants. They want to be cherished. And I think that those little areas of contention where you're up on this high horse and you're really obstinate, right? And I'm going to tell you, man, the reason that I bring this up, and I just throw this out here, is the fact that you're going to have to come to the altar, right? And you're going to see what that altar means and what you created, what you manifested as the altar. And most people will come to two pillars, right? Just like how babies are born, okay? They will come to two pillars and they will realize that they have come before the inverted pentagram, because that is the energy that they've lived off of. You can trick yourself all you want. You can talk yourself out of it. You can act like you're a selfless person. You can put on a big act on YouTube, and 90% of the people are going to believe your bullshit. Okay, but in the end, energy attracts energy, like it attracts like, and there's nothing you can deceive, right? And so this gets back to Cliff High a little bit, where he's talking about how these Jews do the Talmudic magic and all this fucking shit, like they can actually think that they can trick their God. Like, why would you want to believe? So they believe in a God that they find inferior and non-sophisticated. And even more so, they find these ants, right, find themselves more sophisticated than the energy, right? So this does get directly into the sun. It does get directly into the phenomenon that's going on with the sun, is that the sun either doesn't concern itself with the things that we do, the things we know, the things that we consider human quality or humankind, which there isn't any. When we discuss anthropology, and not from a historical sense necessarily, but just from what we were talking about, is where energy culminates into a form, right? Form follows function, function into form, where this geometrical form doesn't seek unity in the way that we like to ascribe, right? So we say that community is entirely necessary for evolution to occur. And when I say evolution, I'm not talking about the Darwinian evolution. What I'm talking about is the evolution of the mind and matter to be able to eat and sequentially go on day to day to day to carry this torch, to champion the form, to solidify this and say, this is who I am. To me, that's evolution. And epigenetically, when there's like what transcendence is when this information is carried on, and why a coat of arms at first represents something so esoteric and so arcane and so deep in meaning, so abiding, right? But when you really look at it, it's just affiliated back to the fucking Roman Catholic Church. It's all the roads lead back to Vatican, further into Babylon. And those who thought that they were aligning themselves with some sort of fundamental goodness weren't able to see beyond the veil, right? And see that what they were actually following was a very malevolent and evil force. They were misguided, or did they misguide themselves? Or were they purely, simply, let's say, unsophisticated? So we live in a time where people are forced into sophistication. They have to, like, you have to come to this statement in this day and age where it's like, well, why aren't you like that? You have all these provisions, and even more so, this stress that everyone talks about, this chronic stress, it's telling you, you're in the cave, Plato's cave or the diamond cave, right? And all this pressure is around you. And you are forming into these crystals. And through mimetic sequence, the burgeoning beginnings of this crystalline structure states the direction that you are going to go in. And then you act like, oh, I'm going to halt all production. I'm not going to finish the crystalline form myself in the formation through sacred geometrical structure. What you don't realize is you just ate it. You just did it. You just uniformly went through the actions, through your thoughts, through your actions, through your behaviors. And when those behaviors have been subjected to outside influences or inside influences, where you are taken over by a demonic force and forced into doing things, you have to battle on that field. You don't make any more compromises. You understand? So when you look at this pathos, rhetoric, and sway, there is an entity that has entered you from prior to your beginning, where in fact, all of this esoteric knowledge, all this occulted knowledge is telling you, you are a fucking doorway. You have never been a locked doorway. There was a time where it was just ticking right over your head, where they just passed by you and you felt, your friend was playing with a Ouija board, but nothing happened to you. Just wait. Just wait. And don't wait in trepidation and fear. Wait until you change. Wait until you go through maturation. Wait until you make a decision that alters your idea of yourself to where something in your subconscious can no longer just reject or accept a notional aspect of the self. The notional aspect of the self is dead. Your past self is dead. The past self that was just based on aphorisms, right? Doesn't exist anymore. And that's all the 1980s were, is aphorisms. From the restaurants that you went to, Marie Callender's, to the order books that you'd order, your average everyday person, big dog outlets and Longaburger baskets and fucking, what was back then? It wasn't Finger Hut. Or your teacher selling Amway, right? These were all obfuscated truths where the manipulation of a persona could eclipse the notional aspect of what somebody was really doing. Like nowadays, kids, if a teacher tried to sell a student Amway, right? And there was somebody like this was actually happening. It was the principal of this special class that I was in high school. Yeah, a special class. And even my teacher there was like, dude, you could be getting straight A's. Like you test off the charts. You're really super smart. I saw it back then. I went on a special program where I no longer would go to school. And somehow God or whatever force presented me with this opportunity where it's like, dude, you stopped going to school in 9th grade. You came to the place where you saw the bullshit that was going on there. Yeah, I've seen everything and known it, acknowledged it, and didn't know what the fuck to do, and was attacked by demonic forces to the point where I'm like, I'm not putting in anymore. I'm staying at home. I'm training. and I'm going to go to work. So I ended up going to work 60 hours a week. No shit, no embellishment. Put together a gym in my garage and did things my way, and then graduated from that program eventually. Actually, what I did is I came within like 5 units and just said, fuck you again. But I got like straight A's in that program. And a special program was created for me. So I feel really blessed for Mr. Henderson. God bless you, Mr. Henderson. And he was another person suffering with cancer. And what cancer tells us is it gives us a ticking time bomb above our heads. It says, look, you're not the type of person that will go into this depth and detail of thought and mind, mantra, magic. Like, no, you're going to stay on the outside fringe of biblical prophecy, and you're just going to choose these nice sounding, rhyming King James versions or New International versions of the Bible, but you're never going to dig into how fucking evil that fucking book is, or how it says Holy Bible with an H on the front of it, or how it's being used is just as much in Freemason rituals, and there are witches walking around all over the place that consider themselves Christian witches. This is not a joke. And if you don't know any of these people, then what fucking rock are you living under? That's why I did that video about Kevin, because he lives under a fucking perpetual rock. And this is his opportunity to begin to have his come to Jesus moment. And not literally, but literally. That is to really look at what Jesus represents and go, dude, it was you all along. It was the you that was being held prisoner within you. But for you to say that, like, these higher esoteric conceptual themes do not elude somebody like this. They're just creating more static, and this world will not allow for any more unsophisticated static. People aren't going to fucking put up with it anymore. They don't just look past certain scriptures and go, oh, well, that's okay if that's in there. They're looking at it and they're going, why in the fuck is this in here? What's the origin? We got to go back to the Nag Hammadi. We got to go back to the Dead Sea Scrolls. So Kevin, I urge you to fucking go back to the origin of the Council of Nicaea, to understand that, and stop forming unsophisticated forms that just give your 73 going on or 74,000 subscribers that subscribe to you because you're shock and awe. You know you're doing videos about Bigfoot and you've never seen anything. Like that one really obscure picture, it's hard to tell what the fuck you're even looking at. And you weren't even the one who captured it. It was your wife. You met your wife on YouTube. Like, dude, come to fucking reality. The reason you're having a good life and you don't understand how people are saying everything's terrible out here and everybody's broke. And it's like, dude, you make almost $100,000 a year on YouTube. Do you understand that? Of course you're going to feel all ecstatic, but you suck in your cheeks and try to get on your high horse, and you're not that, dude, because you are not a sophisticated person. So when you're coming out with information and putting other people down, you have to understand that the vast majority of people are more developed than you. Like, really fucking get this. Like, Cliff High would be the perfect person for somebody like Kevin to look into and follow, but I doubt he would do that. So getting back to kind of how Cliff High sees things is he'll use the word ontological, right? He'll overuse the word. He'll massacre the word, but it still stands because that's the beauty of ontology, okay? So he's dealing with the phenomenon, this phenomenon of self. But as I say, there's something very unnatural about nature. It is not, there's nothing, like when you look at the ontology, there's absolutely nothing natural about it whatsoever. It's completely fabricated. It's a complete and total engineering blueprint. Out through mimetic sequencing, these potatoes are going to be good. Organic ketchup, not that the word organic means jack. And it's this type of nuance that perpetuates idiocy, that causes people to go in mass towards somebody like Dumpy Trumpy, right? And so I get stuck in the middle, and then I realize I'm not stuck in the middle. I have my own viewpoint on these things, right? On these matters, but I love the fact that that South Park, I wasn't a fan for a while, and now I see the need not only for freedom of speech to be exercised, and to go back to a fundamental aspect of, okay, we not only need to expound on the Constitution itself and understand this, and constitutional law, right? That is the base meaning and the principles without manipulation. The true Constitution and constitutional law should be taught in the first grade. Biomechanical movements should be taught so that people aren't blowing their hips out and their shoulders. This is the come to Jesus moment. This is the fucking truth. And Trump still backs and stands behind all these profit mongering and profiteering agencies, and he wants more and more and more. And he's always broke, frumpy dumpy. He always looks lumpy. He never looks, no one ever takes him seriously. He's never a tour de force, no matter if he has the presidency, because he is a dumpy Trump. People ride on his coattails. They ride him like they're riding on a fucking orange sled down a fucking hill and leaving the sled off and letting it crash into a tree, because he is just that way, you know? And I don't really get into whether or not I think that Epstein is still alive. Wouldn't surprise me. Wouldn't surprise me at all. But the reason that stuff doesn't mean anything to me is because it's like, well, what did the person represent? What were the principles that this so-called individual lived by? Even more so, it seems more like him and Ghislaine were nothing but. So when I talk about celebrity, I really lay this out well. And that is that when people finally realize, oh, I'm not going to reinvent myself or reinvent the wheel here. I'm actually looking at all the world as a stage from a Shakespearean point of view, as to say that all I have to do is see the key players in any situation and go, wow, this person's doing this poorly. I could do this better. Or there doesn't seem to be a characterization or someone playing this role, right? So when you begin to understand systems and systemization, that is what most people supplicate themselves to before, right? It's not that they understand it, it's that they see it. And so what most people do is they begin to create, I'm not going to say most, but this is a form of witchcraft right here. And this is how women get along in community or society. And this is even what community and society is fashioned after. And that is to create chaos. So create drama and chaos. You know, I saw somebody doing a whole expose on this last night that I put up that supposedly was Elon Musk's babysitter, and that she witnessed some things that Elon Musk, little Elon, L meaning God, on, look up on. There used to be more information about this. In fact, you can't find it, but there was a God, and there was a civilization that went by the moniker of On. And you can actually do deep dives into this. It's been years since I did it, but On is a very, it's a very mystical segment to go into. But then you have Reeve. So you go backwards on that and you have Eve. What is his mom? She's a fucking witch, right? You have Re-Eve or Eve, like an error, Eve and error, right? And you have, of course, Musk. You have that K and then some. When you go backwards, when you're looking at the gematria, you have to. If you were looking at numbers, you would be looking at them backwards. And then right next to that, and there's no coincidence, is that I posted up, or reposted rather, from a station, from a channel that was looking at this going, is this a coincidence that you have IBM, right? And then you have HAL, right? And then you look at it and you're going, oh, holy crap, it's definitely intentional. And then what I surmised is, well, I'm going to look up JCN, right? As the next sequence, the third sequence. You have to always look at threes. And then it got into communication networks that are based in South Korea that sound a lot like an NLP program. So things that seem like they are trivial, things that seem like they are nuanced, things that seem like they are coincidence, there are no coincidences. Where in fact, when you remove yourself, right, from being the initiator of a particular event, and you realize that the chaos lives through you, and that by the chaos living through you, you therefore are the manifestation, the conduit of chaos, and therefore are chaos, right? And that you are not the progenitor, even though you will be charged by being the progenitor of chaos, right? You are not the originator or the generator of it. You invited it in, and therefore you are, as Zeroth's law describes and explains, ascribes, is that you are an enthalpy-based system of chaos and disorder that produces entropy, and you are ensuring that there will be another chaotic member to the society, or another form of this malevolent, disturbed 9th and 11th chromosome criminalization repeat pattern, where it's mainly all junk DNA. You're lucky you're alive. There's nothing pure about you. You're essentially an NPC player, but it goes on much deeper than that, because you don't just have the souls and the soulless. You don't just have these two tribes, right? You have I'm not going to say 12 tribes, but it all comes back into and amalgamates. So even if, say, 144 tribes were created, right? Well, those will reduce back into integer, and they will they will formulate or form back into a phi or phi based number system. Now, what's the date today? It's 8. What's the next phi or phi number after 8? 13. It's 813 today. And so, of course, this is based on the Goy calendar. Of course, this doesn't apply to you when you begin to treat others as if, not as if, but definitely as animals, farm animals. So when you eat your own, you're saying, I'm above my own. This is not who I am. You follow? So by treating others like farm animals, doing the things, and then it just so happens that instead of just hooves, right? I think I'm gonna have a little, oh no, that was what made me fatter. Because the Goy are not merely just animals. I'm having my beef liver while I do this. Isn't that sick? But do in fact have sexual reproductive parts that you don't have to see as reproductive parts. You can use that child. You can use that poor person who's been misled in society. And you can say, I'm not only going to eat you and grape you first, and we're going to laugh about you and maybe even remember you and talk about you and put your picture up at Cannibal's Kitchen, but we're in fact, we're going to play a game with your bones. We are taking on the rights of supremacy. You look at the physics, you look at the reality of what would a God do. You say, though I know I am being seen, and the eye is upon me, that evil little eye that you want to poke out and fucking split in half and destroy that stupid fucking pyramid that it tries to stand on as if it's something special. But the eye of providence is the consensus. It's everyone. It's everyone who matters. It's everyone who stands up and states, I am alive, and you're not. And what is this statement? It's when they put you down, when you feel down, when you react through the slave morality, when you become embarrassed because someone intentionally embarrassed you, instead of you going, I'm above you, right? And when you say you're above them, then you're proclaiming that you are a part of the gang, the organization that looks at and names the Goy as being below them. So what do you end up doing? You do all the things that are laid out in the Talmud. You grape young children, the Gentiles, different classifications. The Gentiles are those who are the simple folk that have a belief system. The Goy is just everybody. At will, they can see whoever they want, however they want. They follow the law of rule, the rule of law. So the process is the same. The process makes itself. We're gonna put a little bit of on these crispy potatoes now that I've left in there so long. We're putting a little Worcestershire sauce on there. So this makes zero sense to people. Yet this is the most compelling, relevant information that could possibly stretch out into through the network system. Oh yeah, that's better. Get back at that thermic regulation, man. So, it's the simple methodology to both see, feel, and react through the impulses of not only just survival and supremacy, but why you should survive, what and who you are aligned with, ultimately what you serve and who you serve. And this creates a degree or a gradient-based system of human understanding. And when you go beyond the human, right? That which is regarded as the goy, that which is regarded as the human animal, the human form. You don't merely refute humankind or human beings. You don't merely antithetically, from a contrarian sense, behave, juxtapose, antithetical, opposite of what everyone else is doing. But these are the early phases or the early stage of understanding this. When people begin to assert the power. And what ends up happening is they are now entered apprentice. They now live in a world, right? And now they are exposed to a world, and Zachary King gets into this a little bit, where he then was living by way of this mimetic chain, and he still is. These people, just like David Berkowitz, you can't have a moment where you were a mass murderer and you did the most heinous things and you are now saved and you have a come to Jesus moment. No. What that proves, and all that proves, is the fact that you could be the most hideous person, do the most vile and hideous things, still be able to sleep at night, still be able to function every single day, still have a roof over your head, though it isn't a prison, right? But you begin to wonder what those prisons are really all about. Because then, when you are put in a prison, you are the rejected. You're actually have an opportunity, and prisoners will tell you this, right? When they're on those concrete floors or cobblestone floors or whatever the era may be, and they're praying, they feel that holy guiding force. They know that they've been boxed into a cell, into a room, and that they have this come to God, come to Jesus moment, right? And how they act, how they interact, how they react in that moment, in that situation, is telling of who they are. The entire process is a discovery system and a rediscovery system to identify, in many cases, work up through this unholy alliance, right? And to place themselves higher or aside or outside of the human condition in a gradient setting of master morality, right? You don't owe the goy anything. It's kind of like passing a field and showing reverence to every animal that you pass when you damn well know, I say damn well, that those animals are going to be most likely committed to slaughter or used, right? And it's a sick process. We'll let those potatoes dry out a little bit before we'll eat them. I'm not even hungry. I'm just trying to ensure that I do eat those potatoes. But I think what we'll do is we're going to set those potatoes aside and we're going to make some chicken now in the same fashion, the same way that I did. So when you begin to see this and you fully realize that when you regard love in a particular way, under the light of a particular way, you are identifying yourself, how you feel, what you think the universe functions off of. And you come to a place where you're like, you're most likely going to fail. Everyone does. Damn it. I don't want to bite this, but I have like no fucking nails to open this shit up. And it's slippery. Alright, let's see. Get it open, shit. Fucking shit. Alright, so we're gonna... Like, why do they make them like this? Alright, why do they do it? This is annoying. Can't find the lip to open it up. And I think most people just fucking give up and walk away. The insult to injury becomes just too great, you know? Let's see what the fuck we got going on in this shithole. Might have been pulling it the wrong side there. I still can't fucking open it. That's why you gotta have goddamn nails right there. Alright, we're just gonna make a couple good. We're going to turn that way down too. We'll be going through that quick enough to where got lots of beef liver here for the next month and a half. And I completely we're just gonna run that real. Set those potatoes aside. So when you get into craft, the craft presents itself in such a way that seems really mystical, arbitrary, and unavailable to most people. And then others begin to use craft very early on, but they think that they've come to this discovery on their own. But something is aware of them and watching them, watching their interaction with other kids, watching their interaction with other people, and manipulating that. Manipulating the form from the inside, from the outside, trying to change in altered probabilities. What makes most people give up is that they begin to see a pattern and they see an intricacy that just baffles their mind. Because in their minds, they're thinking, wow, this is either a replay, right, of the same thing, like Nietzsche's flat time, what he kind of conclusively came to, because what else is he going to consider, right? That's all the information that he has in front of him. Like, that's the only experience that he has with this sort of Welt or world, right, view. And then you have those who really see it as a computational system. I talk about Konrad Zuse and Alan Turing and many other people. And then you begin to see something else that's been ushered forth and brought forward quite intentionally. All these things are extremely intentional. You better see it. It's part of the process. And that is that there's inference of time travel and even time sort of ribbon manipulation, right? Where you begin to see how there seems to be a fiber, a matrix, a helix, or a strand of time itself that's editable, right? Like a CRISPR type technology where the past, the future can be edited. So when you begin to see things like this, it does get pretty wonky. It gets confusing, downright confusing, because then when you're looking at time as an absolute, when you see yourself aging, when you go through this process, when you realize that, when you see the rational aspect of it and you go, this is ridiculous to even notionally consider this, right? But then there's irrefutable evidence that says that reality itself is being altered, manipulated, and that there are factions. There's a battle between factions. There are those who contend, right, that the world view, the universe is one way. And it really is about supremacy, because it really does come down to ability, emotional intelligence, intelligence quotient, which is also manipulated because the people, the giants are the midgets in this world. The superpowered high IQ, 220 IQ people are actually the dumbest people. We live in a world where everything is inverted and flipped upside down, right? So it challenges, but it edits the reality of how things were supposed to be, and it has done it in such a profound way and so effectively through the human condition, or the conscious condition of being able to affect reality in its animated state, right? Through these processes. So what they figured out is they're going to maintain ignorance by going about certain tasks that seem so ridiculous and fundamentally flawed that when you look at what Kevin A looks into, right, on the Sean Atwood show, and you begin to see how when he puts together this whole ninth circle conceptualization of, it's not a concept, it's provably a thing. It exists, and there's witnesses, and there's people who have been involved in this. But that the popes could be so evil and so vile, and that it comes down to these simple terms. Like, what I'm saying is the main issue is that the terms are not understood and seen. The reason why they do these things is not being seen. That the battle, the heaven, the God, is our reality, our world, and that is to transpose. So if you wanted to return things back to what you would initially esteem as normal, do you understand that the fabric of all the people around you, why this girl got drunk one night and hooked up with this guy, created this error, and then 3 generations down the road, you have this physicist or this person who's brought so much joy and happiness, or this rock musician, or just somebody that's your family member? Well, that person wouldn't exist, right? And this is really what Back to the Future is playing with, right? It's trying to do it in this sort of benign way, but it's also the mere, it's beyond mere suggestibility, right? And then you look at what happened with Michael J. Fox, what happened with Friedrich Nietzsche, what happens to these people who merely get paid to play a role, to play a part, and suddenly you got Parkinson's disease. And my son was like, oh, he's a fighter. And it's like, you don't want to argue with somebody who's not initiated and doesn't understand fundamental aspects of the ontology and how things really work. Right? They think they can just learn a new word or learn a new mannerism, and they're in the club, right? And they don't realize it's all about sacrifice. It's all about sacrificing what you love. It's all about replacing what you love. It's all about going through this process that I talk about. So even the people that are closest to you, by their fruits you shall know them. You'll know who they are. You'll know who they are. You'll know what they are by what they do. They've taken those steps. They can blame whoever they want to blame. The demons hopped into you, but you still did it. That's the way they see it. They replay it and they go, this is what really happened. And then what happens is many people are shown this type of information irrefutably, and they go, what's good isn't, like what's good and what's evil, they're flipped around, they're inverted, right? So that's a whole nother reason that they really work full time to create this inverted world, this inverted reality that we see before us, right? Is to create even more confusion, because there is a place where you come to that altar, you come to that hill, you come to the place of the true aspect of who you are and what you are, right? And if you are at a distance from it, then that's ultimately your expression. You got to understand that you're being pushed to this utter limit, and that nobody is allowed to remain ignorant at this point. Everyone will acknowledge this. And this is going to be, in the next 2 years, this is going to be in everyone's faces. The next 18 months. This type of thinking, this ontology, will suddenly be the most important thing. And things that seemingly are very abstract and notional. And the thing is that I'm talking about, the irony is I'm talking about subjects and telling you the notional irony there, right? That, no, you live in the notional world. You live in a world that's entirely subjective. And you live in the false reality. And the odd thing is my explanation and my description of reality is so abstract because it's impossible even at this juncture to explain to you in simple terms what I'm talking about, and that is these ribbons of reality, these ribbons of time have been fabricated in such an intricate way that it causes one to speculate how many times this has gone through. Or is reality as we know it being projected from a science experiment, right? Almost like, you remember those kids' projectors where from this little projector, you could project an entire star system and a universe up on the roof, right? Well, that's the world we live in. We live in this world of a false light projection, but it's being projected from a center or a place, right? Where it's being held prisoner in a certain continuum, right? And it really comes down to how much you feel. How existent are you, right? So what is being challenged? Everything from the COVID vaccines, quote unquote, right? Quote, single quotes, to the poison food, to people aren't talking about this so much, but poison water, poison air. It's pushing you to and beyond the notional aspect of who are you? Like well, I'm sick. And it's like, well, that's not going to affect who you are. Like, even when you're dying, you're still going to be you. And even more so, you will be more you than ever. You'll be pressed to becoming yourself undeniably to the point where that looks gross. I'm gonna wash that shit off. That's disgusting. Yeah, it's letting off this gross. The chicken has like this stuff coming off of it. And that's not a little deal. That's actually quite a big deal because it's what I notice in all meat. And meat's being it affects the weight of the meat, but even more so, like what you're charged, what I'm charged at the store. But even more so, okay, we'll turn that up a tiny bit. And making chicken to go along with those potatoes. Earning it. So, who you are when you have one kidney, who you are when you have cancer, who you are when you have everything and you think you're a genius and you even have people following you and the rest of humanity doesn't give a fuck about you and you have to call them ignorant, but they don't care about you from the next mofo out there. And there you are on your high horse, and you're essentially just running an occult faction, right? You have to begin to understand that the very people that follow you really only follow you because of the subjectivity of how you appear to them. These are important to understand, wise words. So, who are you really? Not only when the chips are down, but when everybody has to be brought to the same place where they've lost it all. And personalities and personas, it seems very intricate and complex, but we dictate the amount of suffering that it requires. In other words, just like a Keirsey temperament sorter, a personality test, which implies many more variants, and is seeing you from as the goy, yeah, from an existential perspective, just like psychology, it's seeing you as the Talmudic rabbis would see you, right? It's classifying you with really nice terms and saying, how do we put this nicely? That's how it sees you, right? So is that how you want to be seen? Is that how you want to be drugged? Is that how you want to be modified, right? And so we interpolate, we refract, we deduce and induce our own suffering, but the origin of the suffering is coming from another place. In other words, it's saying, oh, you want to make this right? You don't even know what writing this is. You don't even understand, like writing, like the author, right? Or rewriting, like code. You don't even understand the principal origin of how the whole system works. And with EPL, I believe that I came very close to this. And I don't proclaim or project that's it. But I feel like that's how simple and how close, like how effective it is. And I think that the EPL ribbon or strand is going to be seen and acknowledged, at least in the outside scientific world perspective of what data sets are available to us as a so-called collective, which there isn't. So what's thought of as crazy, what's thought of as notional, what's thought of as speculative is going to become everyday jargon and transmission between your average everyday plebeian. Pretty scary, because I always realized that the moment that EPL, esoteric principles of light, was really viewed beyond a speculative measure, and it was undeniably like, holy crap, where did I see that? My gosh, a year and a half later, you put it together and you're going, wow, that is what this is. These are spheres of influence. Like, how am I understanding this? This is the point that people are beginning to come to right now, right? And they have to. And then when they further realize that these aren't notional aspects, in other words, you aren't going to just come up on another perspective of physics and be able to replace the sphere, even though we want to think that there's some scapegoating invited here, where it's perspectivism, right? Like, we misinterpret Plutchik's wheel. We misinterpret Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We misinterpret all this information. Because what we fail to see is the fact that this isn't some democratic display of, oh, you could go this way or that way. You could choose to see the world and through a world perspective, through an egalitarian democratic view of choosing your personality, your perspective, and what hat you're going to put on today. In other words, those that go about the world in a gadabout way and then dismiss everything are entirely wrong. The reality is that you are selfish, that you're self-serving, that you live in a paracosm, you couldn't see anything but your own self-pleasure and your own self-happiness, and that everyone's in the way of that. And that anyone who is in the way of that is going to be cast out. So you live in this limited scope where you are the most dangerous, right? Because you contend that these now Trump bucks, that's the world you live in. You do realize that people have been supporting an entire monetary structure based upon Trumpism, don't you? You do realize that the greed of such individuals that aren't individuals at all, they work as a collective, And Ingersoll Lockwood even discusses this in his book, right? That's pretty strange. And in his next book, he talks about the inner earth and these beings that live in the earth. I mean, really start to come to the understanding that these people had. And then he's practicing law at the same time in New York. And they're both prominent as Madison Grant, right? Passing of the Great Race. If you don't know about that, you better look into it. But when you start to piece everything together and realize that you are not on the outside of this, that no one's on the outside of this, and to choose, oh, I'm on the outside of this, you're actually taking on a role. Do you understand what I'm trying to tell you? Like, what I'm trying to get through is that you're seen, you're known. Your thoughts are seen and known. Your thoughts are impactful, not only in just a positive way of a pep talk toward you, but as to say that energies work through you. You know that it's true. You know why you did certain things, why you showed up to make somebody's life hard or harder on a given day. You were being assisted. You felt this grand assistance, and it showed your alliance with the very God that you act like, you proclaim that you don't follow, where in fact everything that you do, by their fruits you shall know them. You follow that God. And it's like, what God? And it's kind of like, well, you can get into name calling, Baal, Moloch, things like this, right? Which gods or which goddesses, like Mother Circe, or, you can get into this whole thing. But the principles and the symbol are the energy that you follow. And the Goy and their bastardized cursive, as they see us, would only need a name. But when you get down to the gematria of it, I guarantee that something like Baal or Moloch only pokes fun at you as the observer, or Mother Circe. In other words, your perspectivism. That's to say that this entity is unipolar, polarized in the sense of, from an existential sense, that it could be boxed in and described through human terminology and words. It would blow your mind. Why do you think they're gods? Right? They come to, and that's the body politics, right? That's the internet of bodies. You signed the control mechanism. I refute all signatures that the straw man made in this world. I refute the straw man. I am not the straw man. I have gone above the straw man. I was forced in a war situation to make provisional choices to keep the entity alive. What does the entity exist for? What does the entity do? What is the entity's final connection or effort toward a principal union or cause? And we look at this and we look throughout history and go, was this is what all these wars were about? This is what all these arguments are about? This is what all these political maneuvers were about? All the way down to the policies, the police, the procedures, the polemics. You understand? Maybe you don't care, right? Maybe you don't care. Maybe you not only don't understand, but you just really don't fucking care. Let's turn that up so we can get a nice cook on that chicken. Cooked quick today. So right now I've got about 130 grams of carbohydrates in with 2 large potatoes that I've already cooked. I'm gonna throw some ketchup on that. I've got two, what began as pretty large, I'd say they're medium to large chicken breast. So we've probably got, I'm guessing about at least 50 grams of protein there. So technically, you've already got a really good dietary restriction and a delicious meal, and then we'll throw some organic ketchup on that when we eat it. And the whole reason for doing this, I blew it real big last night. I was getting through my 5th night, having a hard time sleeping, trying to be there for my son, but it just always comes back and bites me, man. It always bites me in the end, and I was just pushed beyond. I was trained so hard and focused so hard yesterday. And I try to make, like, he comes along, and just like everybody has, and I'm coming down the street with my barrel of apples, and he just, like, fucking says hi at that moment where the fucking truck smacks into you and all your apples get crushed. And you're like, from an optimistic sense, Pangloss sense, you're going, oh, well, I could make applesauce out of it. Right? And there's no way you could bottle it all up. And there's no way anybody is going to buy it. You're going into a whole different methodology. And it's created that way. It's not that he's wrong. And it's not that I'm wrong. It's not that I'm right, and it's not that he's right. It's the way that it's positioned and fashioned to never allow anything good to manifest in this world. To always mock and make fun of anything that's good. To say that anything that's good is notionally ignorant. And then at the end of the day, what do they act like they are? Good. They'll argue with you. They'll get in your face. And they love supporting corrupt people and rubbing that in your face as well. So I am trying to take that big huge bowl of cereal that I had, Frosted Flakes, the 2 big Lenny and Larry's cookies that I had that weren't that good, and the 4 ice creams that I had, the Oreo ice cream, which I don't even think it's real ice cream. And I'm farting up a storm today. And to take that and say, okay, that's a transitional shift toward carb loading. Let's take those carbohydrates and not just try to waste them, but let's transition everything toward training. That is the optimism that I'm having. Right? That is the optimism that I don't think is Pangloss. I don't think that it's just like this over-optimistic ignorance. I think that if I train heavy enough, like I did yesterday, that's what really spiked my appetite to where I had plenty of calories yesterday. I ate several times in keto, in carnivore. I even took my provisional heavy cream with butter, but it still just wasn't doing it for me because my muscles wanted to grow. I was doing a hypertrophic exercise modality. And I'm going to be doing the same thing today. I'm going to put that 50-pound or that 28-pound backpack on my back and then use all the band resistance. That I'm not sure how much resistance it actually adds or aids. I think it's over 200 pounds. In fact, I think it's closer to 225 to 200 and even 65 pounds. But I can't really tell. I mean, it's so different. Like you don't feel the actual pressure as if you have a bar on your back, but the tension's constant to where when you're going through flexion and extension, concentration, of actin and myosin filaments and cross bridging, right? It's the constant tension of it. So I'm hoping that 28 pounds of actual gravity-based resistive force, right, is going to make a big difference in my squats today. And I'm also coming down to the fact that, okay, we're doing the same thing every day, trying to get the energy to do it. I've been hit and miss. I've only been walking a few times a week, and my walks pale in comparison to where they were. I stopped doing really high volume walking, not really out of choice. It was just, well, I did make the choice in the fundamental sense that I started to train heavier, that I'm really trying to increase specifically the size of my arms. Then I get into the shoulders that have to be able to support that, right? So that's what we will be working on today as well. And maybe even leading into tomorrow. Because what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to effectively challenge the muscle, right? Stimulate the muscle growth enough and reach a certain point of fatigue where my body is going to tell me you could either keep going or I'm coming to the place where it's like, oh, you're going to have to train tomorrow. And then sometimes tomorrow doesn't come. And that's just, you kind of have to shoot higher than lower, right? In other words, my goal is to work out 6 days a week. That's my goal. Even every day. What I end up with is probably closer to 4. And I'd like to walk every damn day as well. And we got some chicken. And I tend to overcook chicken on purpose quite intentionally. It is not done unintentionally. I am trying to cook that chicken up to where I am not going to get sick. I cook the shit out of it. Let's see, the timer got me an hour and 38. Okay. And I've known that I most definitely probably won't be around all that much longer. There's a point that you have to come to where you do come down to the rationalism of, okay, the universe is irrational, the cosmos is entirely irrational. I feel like everything's going to be okay. Those feelings have never, ever panned out. They've always been a lie. It's always been like this idea that's engineered into us. And I think this is what leads them to even reference us as the Goy, right? Is that we were engineered to feel optimistic when absolutely there was no reason to have any optimism. I think that's how we deal with living on this prison planet. And I don't agree with Cliff High when he asserts that it's not a prison and it's not. It's like, dude, it would be a prison if you had principles. You don't have principles. You admitted yesterday that you don't have principles 2 days ago. Like for him to say, I selfishly made choices, he said this, and manipulated the field. Don't you realize that you just admitted that you're worse than the Pharisees and the fucking Talmudic Jews? Don't you realize that you used it? Well, I had to. And it's like, no, you're one of them, motherfucker. You're fucking one of them. Yeah. And you even went and got young pussy. And you're suffering every aspect of doing those poor choices. I feel sorry for your wife who passed away. She was probably in hell with you, man. You're a selfish prick. Yeah. It always ends the same. And so you can't idealize or see people in this overly bolstered way. There are no fucking heroes, right? And so when you come down to this, the only thing, the hero's journey is about choosing principle. Seeing principle, choosing principle, and realizing that no God, no person has principle. And that, even more so, the better you are put together, the better your chances are of being of a higher mind, the more under attack you're going to be. So you begin to wonder why people like Cliff High, or even Kevin with Eek Acres, which I don't bunch him into that. I think in a way, his simplicity is refreshing. And don't get me wrong, I still see many redeeming qualities in Cliff High and Kevin with Eek Acres. It's undeniable. But you have to start asking yourself in the area of contention was this an anomaly that occurred based on an ignorant passage, a choosing of, a supplicating to the notional aspect of a lesser role, right? The fundamentalism with Kevin and the need to coddle and have sufficient resources and to feel like you're better, like Cliff High. There ain't nothing better about him. He wasn't able to formulate anything. Everything, even down to his amino acid formulas, are a ripoff. They've been around forever. And then he'll say, oh, I didn't proclaim that they were, man. I'm just trying to do my best out here and just be a dude. And it's like, no, you're not. Look at you. By their fruits you shall know them. You're trying to put together an occult mechanism. You're trying to sneak around and gain supremacy and have your own faction, have your own corner where you can be God. Well, you're not God to me, bud. You're not God at all, are you? You're just an old man. And I don't want to wipe him away. But in my choosing not to wipe him away, what am I choosing, him or me? This is what they do. I choose principle. I choose purity. And I say, here's the challenge. Are you pure or are you not? And so what's happened is a lot of people are beginning to suddenly come into this place where not only do they realize they're being attacked and made to do things from the inside out, but they're realizing their part in it, and they're going, I refuse to do this. And they're standing behind principles because there's nothing else. The most important thing is purity and the pure source. And when you have compromised this, it is obvious, and by their fruits you shall know them. And we're going to end it right there, because I'm going to go get some ketchup and I'm going to eat.